I think in terms of the message of Search My Tongue, I think the poet is trying to get us to understand and perhaps empathise with her difficulty in being a part of two cultures. Obviously, she uses her language to show this difficulty. You know, she's trying to overcome it, and that she feels that she's lost it, and she sort of talks about it in a very physical sense, as though it is physically lost and she can't get it back.
It's a real part of her identity, isn't it, a language, the fact that, and as she refers to it as a mother tongue, she sees it as something that is part of her, that she does think that she's lost completely, obviously, until she starts dreaming in the language, and then she realises that she hasn't lost it, that it is still part of her.
I think the two places that are involved as well are quite interesting. Growing up in India and then going to New York, I imagine that's such a huge contrast that you would get caught up in New York and the New York lifestyle, that you would be so caught up in that you would forget about where you came from. So not deliberately, not a conscious attempt to. You just be, there's that New York's so busy and lively, you would just get swept away in that.
Yeah, it's the fact she's never using her first language while she's there, isn't she? She's just trying to use the language that everybody else does, but she never then totally feels comfortable with that language. It's not, it's not a part of her the same way her old one, her original one is.
Do you think the poet's trying to teach us something other than people experiencing difficulty between two cultures? Do you think there's anything else to maybe be learned?
Well, I think she feels guilty, doesn't she, that she'd forgotten about her culture, or she wasn't, speaking in that language as much as she wants to. But I think the message really is that it doesn't matter where you go in the world. Where you come from is where you come from. Home is always going to be home. And maybe not to feel so guilty if you forget about home when you're away somewhere else, because it's still part of you. It's always there.
It's your identity, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that links in with the last line of Hurricane It's England, where Grace Nichols says the earth is the earth is the earth, and that you can actually be comfortable in different places, and that different cultures and different places have got lots in common, and you needn't feel like Manisa Alvi does in Presents from My Aunts, alien.
Completely alien to that, yeah. In terms of language, the most obvious one is the use of the two languages. The Gujarati in the middle is really visual in the way that it's placed in the middle, the part where she's dreaming and actually starts dreaming in her language, and as we have the phonetic spelling in there so that we can actually pronounce how it would be pronounced.
Why do you think she does that? Why do you think she gives us the phonetic translation underneath? What do you think she's trying to teach us maybe, or get us to do?
To actually be able to say it, so that you wouldn't actually be just looking at those words thinking what's going on in that part, to actually you to be able to say it so that you can hear what she's saying in the word.
And perhaps for us to empathise what it is like to speak two languages. I know that
us that opportunity.
Yeah, I dropped German in year 11, and I can speak obviously English fluently, and it would take a hell of a lot of learning and work for me to be able to speak another language. So maybe she wants us to empathise with how she actually feels, perhaps. I think one of the obvious language features for me is the extended metaphor running through the poem, that she doesn't actually describe a tongue or a language as the tongue. She uses this image as the plan, and I think that's really visual, and I think that it enables you to understand how this language can tie itself in knots, how it can be dominated by something, and that almost the Gujarati language is like a weed, it's being suffocated. And then I think the image at the end where it grows longer, grows more, it grows strong veins, is really positive, and then obviously links in with the last line where she's very optimistic and hopeful about the future, because she realises after having this drink that it does blossom out of the mouth.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think the other thing as well is the direct addressing there, the I, you, which I always think is a really effective tool of getting you engaged in the poem. It's as though she's communicating directly to you. I think it helps you empathise with her as well, and what she's actually saying. It makes another connection to Presents from My Aunts in Pakistan as well. That's very much direct addressing there as well, which I think is quite an interesting language point.
I think as well in Half-Caste as well, where Agard's asking this person that uses the term half-caste, who explain yourself what you mean. So I think as well, you know, they've got this immediacy of talking directly to the person that they want to get this message across to.
In terms of structure then, I think the main part for me is it's split into three parts, with the Gerati dream in the middle, and then at the bottom bit, the sort of translation of the dream, if you like.
Why do you think she's done that?
Maybe to make, you know, so that we can empathise with her, and that she understands that it is difficult to speak these two languages, and it'd be difficult for us to understand her language, so therefore gives it us in the phonetic translation so that we can in some way understand.
Yeah, certainly. I think one thing that stands out to me, Sujata Bhatt's first language, her mother tongue, is Gujarati, and I think it's interesting that the majority of the poem is actually written in English, in this foreign language, and the first stanza and the third stanza seem to me to overpower the Gujarati in the middle, as though she's saying that the English language and the English culture are actually dominating, and this is the reason why that she feels that she's forgotten it and that she's lost it and she can't really know.
Yeah, and the fact that it's placed in the centre is almost like it's central to her, yeah. That it's her, you know, a central part of her identity. You know, it's at that point that she realises it is when she starts dreaming.
So that's a more positive interpretation, that it being placed centrally, you know, is something positive.
Rather than just being the dominated.
Yeah. I think in terms of a personal response, the thing that stands out to me, makes me understand this more than I would if she didn't use this technique, is the extended metaphor. I really like the visual imagery of this plant, of it taking over life, of it strangling and almost suffocating this other language. And as a person that only actually can speak one language, I think it helps me to empathise as well. And another thing, the phonetic translation underneath, I really struggled with pronouncing some of the words when I first read it. And I think that I enjoyed that opportunity to have a go at another language. And it really did make me understand how some people that possibly do come to this country, maybe some of our pupils, really do struggle with learning a different language on top of learning to fit in, which I think sort of fits nicely with presents from my aunt's, where, you know, she's struggling to fit in.
Yeah, I mean, we do expect other people to learn our language. Everybody does, you know, English people do expect around the world, even when we go around the world, we expect people to speak our language, whereas we don't always take the opportunity to learn another language. And I think we should be thinking about how difficult it is for people to feel that way, and to feel not always part of things.
Yeah, I think that fits in with Hurricane as well. Hurricane hits England, the same kind of idea. I like the conflict she's got again of sort of like the old culture and a new culture coming together and trying to come to terms with that again. I think we've all sort of had some kind of conflict like that at some point in our lives. It might not be quite about culture, but there's some kind of inner conflict where we've had to try and come to terms with it. But yeah, I really like the poem. I like how she expresses herself as well and gets a message across.